So virtually everybody here is 50 years old, I guess. I know how old. I know how old most of you are. With the exception of Daniel, I know how old everybody is. So what does that tell you about when people generally get serious about investing?
When they get close to return.
Yeah. People come to me all the time and they're about to retire. Most of them are 63 to 70. Now, 10, 20 years ago, you would see people retiring when they were 58 or 60. There's one thing that has completely changed that, and it is the cost of health insurance. So here's what happens. I had quite a number of people 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, several people that went to church with me, retired, and their total, the cost of health insurance, husband and wife, was maybe $500 a month. And then a year or two later, it was $800 a month. Then it was $1,200 a month. Now it's $1,400, $1,500 a month, and guess what? Almost every one of those have gone back to work. When that happened, it just sent fear all over everywhere. I'm sure it's not Brazoria County, but that's just where 2/3 of our clients are. And so people develop the attitude, I can't afford to retire until I'm 65 years old. Why would that be? Medicare. All of you here, as maybe Daniel, know this story. 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was walking down a flight of stairs about a block from my office, and I went to flip the light switch on, and they didn't work. And it was already dark. It was daylight savings time, and I could see, it was a glass door down there, and I could see the road because there was a light outside. I thought, I can see this all right. And I tripped and stumbled and fell down flights and ripped off all the muscles off both of my legs, and had 3 surgeries and had almost a year of therapy. And that happened 2 months after I got on Medicare. Now, for $140 a month, I'm not here talking about insurance tonight, but I am talking about saving. For $140 a month, my total payment was $330,000, and I never got a bill. I didn't pay one dime. Now, that's why people are retiring later. They're also living longer. In our church and other places too, there's a whole lot of 88 to 95-year-old people that get in their car and drive every day. Not well, but they do drive. So I want to show you something. Rule of 72. And this is why, to your kids and to your friends and to younger people that you work with, you ought to help instill this in their brains. In the little handout you have, we have a number of extra copies. Whatever return you get divided into 72, and that's how many years it takes to double. If a person was making a 3% return on a bank CD, and we're going to see who the math experts are, divide 3 into 72, and that's how many years it takes to double. What is that number? Somebody's 30 years old and they got $10,000. By the time they're 54 years old, they have $20,000. And by the time they're 78 years old, they got $40,000. The problem is inflation pretty much eats all that up. And we have to have inflation. That's how people get cost of living raises. So what if somebody, instead of making 3%, made 7%? We round it off here, but we're going to double about every 10 years. So here's a 30-year-old, and he has $10,000 or she has $10,000. By the time they're 40 years old, that's $20,000. By the time they're 50 years old, that's $40,000. By the time they're 60 years old, that's $80,000. By the time they're 70 years old, that's $160,000. By the time they're 80 years old, $320,000. Now, does it seem like to you that the difference between 3% and 7% return on your money is all that big of a deal? Well, it is. It absolutely is. Can you see this all right, Jenny?
Oh, the podium is like, it's all right.
What if you made a 10% return on your money?
Can you see from that podium?
I think we can move the podium. I got it.
Yeah.
Hey, that's right. There you go. I would say this is what you ought to tell every 30-year-old that you know that's probably playing video games tonight or watching television or doing something. if I made 10% on my money, I'm going to double every 7 years. So now I'm 30 and I got $10,000 to invest. When I'm 37, it's going to be $20,000, right? When I'm 44, it's going to be $40,000. When I am 51, it's going to be $80,000. When I am 58, it's going to be $160,000. When I'm 65, it's going to be $320,000. And when I'm 72, it's $600,000.
Wow.
Putting $10,000 to work someplace. So we're looking at this. Does how much money you make, the percent return you make, have an impact on the rest of your life? It absolutely does.
How do I get that 10%?
Well, you just walked right into my first slide. So, what I want you to look at is fundamentally this. This is why people invest in stocks. Have you ever heard anybody say, oh, you can lose all your money in stocks? It's risky. It's kind of like going to a gambling casino and you can lose everything. Anybody ever heard that? I've heard that about 10 million times. So what I want to go to is, Amy, let's go to the first slide.
Okay.
And I want you to look at something with me. All right. So you have this in front of you. This is the stock market for 52 years, from 1970 to 2022. Without looking at all the clutter up there, as a general rule, what does that line do? It goes up. And it goes up at a pretty predictable rate, doesn't it? So for 50 years, now I can tell you, some of you are old enough to know this. Nixon resigns over here. This is when, here's the big one right here. This is basically, back it down just a minute.
Sorry about that. Got a little carried away.
So this was a big time. The United States invades Iraq, and Iraq is the most powerful. They got weapons, and they're going to kill everybody. It's going to be a world war, and the market sold off for a period of time. Over here, we basically had a housing crisis in 2008 and 9. Did you know that for 10 years we had ninja, no income, no job? They would go alone for 100% of the house without any credit, without any down payment. And all of a sudden, we had inflation like we have now, and almost 5 million people took their keys and they set them on the countertop and they walked out. That was a neat idea. It was a neat idea for the government to want. The goal of America is home ownership. And so we're going to help everybody have ownership. Now, do you know that in that period of time right here, the second largest bank in America, Lehman Brothers, went bankrupt. The fourth largest bank, Bear Stearns, went bankrupt. In one weekend, Merrill Lynch went under and were bought on a Sunday night by Bank of America. They were pressured into buying Merrill Lynch. Right over here, where I worked for 9 years, was A.G. Edwards, and it became Wachovia. And in the middle of the night, Wachovia goes under, and Wells Fargo is forced to buy the second largest brokerage firm. All that happened overnight. You would think if two of the largest banks, I'm going to tell you one other story that's amazing. There was one company that the government decided we cannot afford for them to go bankrupt. This ought to tell you a little bit of something. AIG. AIG was the largest insurance company on the planet. They insured everything. They insured the federal government, they insured states, they insured foreign governments, and so they let two of the largest banks, Lehman and Bear Stearns, go under, but they said to AIG, we'll take you. And they covered all of their debts. They paid them back. Now, what I'm saying is, when you look at this line, that kind of looks like just a tiny little blip, doesn't it? But I can tell you back in 2008 and 2009, when the market dropped 30% in a few months' time, couple of months' time, people thought it was the end of the world. You know what this little blip is right up here? COVID. Do you know that in a month's time, never before, the federal government flipped the switch and turned off the entire U.S. economy? This is a $60 trillion a year economy, and they turned the switch off and made everybody stay home, and they shut everything down. There was nobody cutting trees. There was nobody making pulpwood for plywood. There was nobody doing anything. This was a 30% drop. How big does that look over a 50-year period of time? Now, what I would tell you is there are always big, massive, incredible events going on, and there has always been that way. Let's go to the next chart now. Something now, volatility. So this chart tells you on any given year, this is 42 years, on any given year, how much the market was down at one time during that year. 17%, 18%, 34%. This number up here is where did it end up? Now, do you realize that basically this was 42% move from top to bottom in 1 year? It was down 17, ended up 26. Here's 32. Here's 34 plus 2, 36% move in this. The only time we ever had 3 negative years in a row, ever, the stock market began in 1858. 1858. Do a little math at how long it's been around. You know what happened the 3 years before? This was the dot-com boom. And we had a 34% gain and a 20% and a 31 and a 27 and a 20. And what was happening was they were measuring the value of company based on clicks. Now, I'm the oldest person in this building, even older than Milton, if you believe that. We had this 3 months. 3 months. So they weren't making any money. And nobody knew when they were going to make money. But what happened, how many clicks? Well, we got billions of clicks. And so they bid up the price of these stocks, and then all of a sudden, the check came due. Now, I will tell you, take a look right here in 2020. This was COVID. We were down at one time 34%, and we finished that year up 16%. Now, what I'm going to show you in a minute, for 80 years, the stock market has averaged 10% a year. 10% a year for 80 years. And that's as far back as we measure it like we do now. So, if you average 10 for a long, long period of time, and you have a 30% return, the 16 and the 27, what would that tell you?
It's up and down.
And we're ahead of our skis. So what you see here was, this last year was a regression to the mean. And we got a lot of scientific people sitting here. When we had years like this, look at this, we had 3 negative years here. But what happened before? 34, 20, do you know in this period of time, 5 years, the market was up 26% a year? And we paid for it. So what you see is, when we come over here, I'm going to tell you that the stock market, for a lot longer than I've been alive, has averaged 10% a year. Does that happen every single year? No. Are there rare occasions when there are negative years 2 times in a row? Yes, we've had a few of those. We had 1 here and 1 here. So 2 in the last 50 years. Let's go to the next slide now. This goes back to another way of looking at what I'm talking about here. If a person has money in a treasury bill, or they have money in a CD making 3%, here is their line. And we're talking about here, this is about 15 years. So here's their line. How much did it go from here? Here's 0.
Not much.
So let me just tell you, here is why this is important. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to tell you why this is important. And
What
it's,
does that represent, a CD?
yes.
Okay.
Let's go back just a second. So this too shows you here is what the stock market looks like. This is 15 years. 15 years. Take a look right over here at what we're talking about here, at the growth, cumulative annualized returns. So we're talking about 250% as opposed to about 5% or 6%. Okay, let's go look at the next one. Now, I want you to think about this. This is what I see, and there are two things that made me decide I want to do this. And we're going to do this on a monthly basis. We're going to feed people. It's not going to cost anybody a nickel to just come and listen and look. Number one, is it important to try to start saving money as early as possible?
Yes,
Why?
because of compound interest.
There you go. What if a young person who is 20 years old had $3,000 and they didn't need to buy another new computer or another game or whatever, and they put that $3,000 to work making maybe 12 to 15%? What do you think that would be worth when they're 60 years old? Probably close to a millionaire. Do you know that we do this all the time? A baby is born, and we open up a 529 account, a newborn baby, 6 months old, 2 months old, a year old. And we notify grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody, hey, we've got a college saving plan, and we'll have oftentimes maybe $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 put in that account. Do you know that when that child is 20 years of age, halfway through their college, it'll be worth about $80,000 to $90,000?
Oh.
Could you imagine paying for a college education? Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, godmoms, goddads, put some money together, $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, and when they're 20 years, because you don't have to pay for all your college your freshman year. You pay for it over 4 years. You can pay for a college degree. That's what compounding does. Here's the second thing that happens. Right now, I have 4 men, all roughly the same age, about to retire from BASF. They all worked, 3 of them in the same block. They made the same money per hour. They had worked close to the same number of years, between 37 and 42 years. These guys went to work when they were 18 years old or 19. You didn't have to have 2 years of college back 40 years ago. Now, 2 of them have $1.6 and $1.8 million in their 401k. 2 of them have $500,000 and $600,000. And one of them had a divorce. So it would have been double that. But here's what happens. Somebody has one of these events happen, and it scares them to death. I was going to lose all my money, and so I pulled it out. Well, here's the problem. You've got to be right twice in a short period of time. When exactly do you pull it out, and when exactly do you put it back in? And I've been doing this for professionally 30 years, but I've been trading stocks for about 46 or 47 years. I have never been that good. And I don't know anybody that is, and I know some of the smartest people in this industry. So what I would say is, what happens if somebody, they've got their money invested very nicely, and they get scared, and they pull it all out because they believe that the whole world's going to go dark, and we'll be clubbing animals to death and cooking them over an open fire. And that causes them to completely blow up the rest of their life. So Janice's dad is 88 years old. Still drives, came to see me a couple of days ago. We have a man that sits right up close to me, 90 years old. Do you know that people are regularly living to 95 to 100? So what happens if you retire at 65 and you live another 35 years without a job? This is why I decided I wanted to do this. And what I would ask you guys is, if you know somebody that wants to, that has an interest in it or should have an interest, let them know. Very quickly, I'm going to go through this. 1942. Anybody know what was important about 1942? So what happened on December the 7th, 1941?
Pearl Harbor.
Now that had never happened before. So I did a funeral some years ago for a gentleman named Floyd McMillan. Floyd McMillan was on one of the ships. He was on leave. He had met a young girl at a place, and they're walking across the softball field when they saw the Japanese planes coming overhead. Now, I want you to look at how these are the up years and down. Up 4.1 years, down 11 months. Here, the market's up 7 straight years, that's down 1. It's up 4, it's down 6 months. It's up 3, down 7 months. Come over here. 6 years, we have 1 month down, 1 year down. This is more recent. 12 straight positive years. And then we have a 1.5 year sell-off. And then we have another 5 years. Let's take a look now just recently. This goes all the way back to 2009. We have had 11 consecutive up years before this year. I want that to soak in for a minute. This is what I tell people all the time, and I've had conversations with a number of you. The return on the stock market is not in question. The behavior of the stock market is not in question. I say to my clients, the only thing in question is your behavior. So one of Amy's jobs is I do now these monthly seminars. And I'm going to tell you that has reduced the number of scared people calling me and coming in my office by 80 or 90%. Because every 30 days, I'm saying to them, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, this is what's taking place here. Today, Amy was telling me about, she's calling some of my clients and just touching base. And so she called a gentleman that was referred to me about a year ago, I guess. And what did he tell you about his return? What was he happy about?
He was happy because you had made him $30,000 this week. And he wanted me to let you know that in the stock market that he listened to you and didn't really do anything, just kind of watched it, and that you did exactly what you said it would do.
So we never go 100% cash. But oftentimes we go 20% or we go 30%. What I'm going to talk about the next time we do this, in a little under 4 weeks, is the stock market is a market of stocks. There are 12 different sectors. I'm going to give you an example. The market was down 19%, and in the last 3 years, we're going to show you this, 3 months, rather, 3 months, it's up 11% in 3 months.
Wow.
Now here's an amazing thing. What got killed was all the high-flying, the Amazons of the world, what we call FANGs. Now they've all changed names now, but F-A-A-N-G. So there was a time the S&P 500 was 25% Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. 6 companies out of 500. Now, they've all dropped about 60%. You know, energy stocks went up 40% this year. Same year. All of these dropped by 60%, and energy stocks went up. I'm talking about ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, Marathon, between 40 and 60%. Now you think, how could that possibly be? Because we shut down the XL pipeline and we did all these things, and our administration's trying to kill the oil industry. But you know what happened in that period of time? 2.5 years ago, before this administration came in, oil was between $55 and $58 a barrel. What is it now? Almost 80. So all of this kerfuffle, I hear this all the time. A bunch of people in my office drive diesel trucks. I just saw diesel $3.99 a gallon. It was $5, $5.25. What made the price of diesel go up? Demand. And there's a lot less of it. But you've got less supply and more demand. So oil companies are not putting any money into research because they don't think the government's going to back them. But you know what's happening? They're making money hand over fist. So what I'm saying to you is, out of 500 stocks, that doesn't count the Russell 2000 that we deal a lot with, the EFA, which is Europe and Asia. All of those companies, they're always something making money. Let's go to the next slide now. Just very quickly, this is like 97 years that the market is something like what it is today. What percentage of the time, and this is going to be math again, here's the number of up years, here's the number of down years. What percentage of the time is the stock market up, roughly? So Jenny, she figured this out.
Yeah, no.
2, 3.
I got chemo over. I'm calling that card.
All right, a little over 70%. 70% of the time it's up. Now, I would say you got it.
I'm sorry. I told you I had chemo brain.
So here's all the down years, here's all the up years, here's the ones that were down 28% or more, 3 in the last 97 years. The world is crammed full of people who had money in stocks at one time and they didn't know what they were doing and they were in a few stocks and they got scared and they pulled out and they will never go back. And they come to see me, and let's say they're 60 years old, healthy, and they say, oh, I don't know, no stock for me. I only want bonds. Okay, so you want to live on 3 to 4% when inflation is now 6. Well, how long do you plan on living? You see, that's the problem. The wonderful thing is we have learned so much about open heart surgery, and we've learned so much about diabetes and cholesterol and all of these, and we got people living longer. A couple of years before she passed. How old was she when she passed? 83. Yeah. So my dad was 86, mom 81. So people's bodies are outliving their brains. Now, I hope they figure that out, how to make the other part of that happen. But this is why even people that are y'all's age, if you're going to be alive, and you might be another 35, 40, 45 years, this is pretty significant, isn't it? Let's go to the next slide now. The percentage of the time the stock market is up. It's up 53% if you look at it on a daily basis. Monthly. How many times is it down? Well, it's up 63% of the time on a monthly basis. 3 months, we're at 70%. On a yearly basis, what percentage of the time is the stock market up on a yearly basis? 77%. What about a 3-year basis?
Well, it's amazing.
So, this is what I was taught as a youngster. It's not timing the market. It's time in the market. This is what I'm going to tell you how this works. The wealthiest people on earth, the multi-billionaires, own many of the corporations, the 500. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. If they can't make 10% on their money, you know what happens? They'll shut it down. How many of you here know companies that have been shut down in the last 5 to 10 years? Those of you who lived around here, anybody remember a company called Bottom Dollar?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody remember Gibson's?
Yeah.
What about Howard's?
Yeah.
What about Singer? What about Sunbeam? What about Curtis Mathis? What Motorola? On and on and on and on. What happened? So the people that run those companies say, we're out. And they'll go put their money someplace else. That's why the market is going to average 10% a year. Does it do it every year? No. This is what we call disruption. Disruption. Because here's what happens. And I'm going to tell you this. I have learned this after, I'm going to back up and say one thing. I think Milton will know about this, and maybe you guys as well. When I first got into business and went to work at Dow Chemical, I was 21 years old. and you could buy Dow Chemical stock at a 15% price below the strike price, 15% below. And my father, who had a lot of Dow stock, said, you need to start buying Dow stock. And I don't care. He said, son, if you sell it 4 months later, you need to buy all you can get. So I did a couple of years. And then I got to asking, talking to a lot of my friends, and none of them said, Dow stock's worthless. It ain't no good. And I'm saying to them, but you get it at 15% below. You can go borrow the money at the credit union, pay it off. It's worth 15% more guaranteed in 4 months. So I started saying, I called HR and I said, can I buy somebody else's stock? Yeah. So I was like, I want to buy your stock. 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 That's how I started trading stocks about 48 years ago. So I've been doing this almost 50 years. When you get out here over a 10-year period of time, what percentage of the time is the market positive?
It's 97.
Now, so the return of the stock market is not in question. It's going to average 10% a year. Now, very often, and Milton and Ellen, you guys have this, we'll put 30 to 40% bonds because bonds move opposite stock. Now, everybody knows we're going to make less money. We're going to make 7, 7.5, 8. Why do we do that? Because people get scared to death. And when they get scared, they bail out. And if they get scared enough to bail out, I can't hardly get them back in. So I can't afford for them to get that nervous. So we end up putting, this is kind of like driving an old tractor, and you have a spring under the seat, and you also got padding in the seat. So it doesn't jostle your kidneys to death. All right, let's go to the next slide very quickly. This is this volatility, basically. Let's go to the next slide. One more. Now, let's look at this. Declines. How often does the stock market drop 5%? On the average, how many times per year?
3 times.
3 times. What about 10%? A 10% drop. Somebody said, I can't lose money. I can't lose money. 10%, it happens about every 16 months. A 15% drop every 3 years, and a 20% drop about every 5 years. Now, there's a large number of people, every time this 5 years happens, they are burying stuff in the backyard. They're digging up a fallout shelter. It never happened like this before. It happens every 5 years, and it's been doing it. Look up here, 1942 to 2012. I'm going to give Denise a chance to redeem herself. How many years is that?
40 to 20, 40.
80 years.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm going to call somebody else.
Don't call on me.
Don't call on
I'm
me.
telling you.
Not at 7:39, don't call them, okay. Is it the end of the world when the stock market drops 20%?
No.
It happens like rain. It happens all the time. And the reason is markets get ahead of themselves. People start bidding things up, and all of a sudden, we're not averaging 10% a year. We made 15%, and then we made 30%, and guess what? We're going back to our 10% line. You can take that to the bank. I'm going to show you that in just a minute.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
It might not be a good one, but
It's
so
probably
if it every 5 years the market is down 20%,
Yeah.
in order for it to recover, do you double that amount of time? So if it's down 20, does it take 10 to get back up, or does it take the same amount?
So I'm going to tell you the actual real answer to that. This is if you had 100% of your money in just the S&P 500, you invested in all 500 stocks. We have never done that for one person. We spend a lot of time looking at what's going to do better this year. What about this quarter? That's why So the market this year was down 25 to 26%. It ended up the year down 18, and our accounts were down 9 to 10. So, using my old analogy about an old farm tractor that you're driving it has no springs on the seat. It would jostle your kidneys out. The same thing happens. So, what I want to talk about going forward is the 12 different sectors, and they are as different as night and day. Do you know what's making a lot more money than us right now?
I have a quick question
Sure.
about that.
Yes.
So, the market being down, the market being up, the market being down, you only really lose, because you're in regardless. So, you're in, and you're losing and you're winning, and you're losing. So, it's not really a loss to you. Only if you take it out, do you lose or win, depending, I guess, on where
Yes.
you are. Okay, sorry.
Unless you're 78 or not 79 years old
Mhm.
and you're about to retire. So if you're thinking,
Mhm.
I'm 78 and it's down
You
20%.
don't look that old.
I'm speaking because of my parents, actually.
Yeah.
Because they're clients of yours and they worry about the stock market. And so in my thought process, and I'm still learning, someone who's 80 is going to worry a lot more about it than someone who's 60.
And we will be 30% stock,
Okay.
30 to 40%. So what I would tell you is this. Our job is stay in touch with people, stay in front of people, talk to them. You know, and I tell people, put your statement up, go walk your dog, play with your grandkids. We got this. Okay, it's going to be all right. But what I have to do is keep people in this, because I'm going to tell you this. I'm doing a funeral service tomorrow afternoon for a 90-year-old lady. This last year, I did a funeral service for a woman who was 100 years and 4 months. Now, she and her husband owned a business in West Columbia, last name Autry. I did a service for a 99-and-a-half-year-old man that lived on Kyle Road. R.L. Norris, some of you know him. His wife will be 100 in April.
Wow. Yeah, no,
I did another service for a 96-year-old, 2 94-year-olds. Do you think people are living longer?
Mhm.
Is it important that even if you're 60 years old or 50 or 70, that you start making 7 or 8% instead of 2 or 3? Absolutely. So what I would say is, this is the one thing I want you just to focus in your mind is, the market is going to take care of itself. It's going to grow. I don't care if you're looking at 120 years, 80 years, 30 years, 50, 10% here. Now, by the time people get to be 55 to 60, we're only going to be about 60% stock, because this old tractor would probably shake their kidneys to death. So we can't afford the volatility. I would rather them make 7 or 8% and never get scared enough to get out and just learn to live with it, and things will be okay. Now, I want to show one other thing. Questions? Tell me what you think. Daniel, have you ever heard anything like this before? So this is brand new to you. You ever heard anything like this?
Well, I'm interested in stocks. I know Derek has got a lot of stocks, and so I was trying to. That's why I came, so I would better educate myself. But it's interesting to see the slides, to see that it's only down a very small fraction amount of time compared to how much it's up.
Yes.
So I think stop watching TV and listening to people
Yeah.
and fear mongers, because it just feels like they're trying to get you to pull out of it and influence the market by that way. So just my terminology, like when I was an operator and somebody wanted to keep messing with the parameters, I said, would you just please leave it alone and let it ride?
Yeah.
Let it settle out. And that's what you need to do with stocks. You just need to let it ride and let it settle out.
So Milton's mother was one of my first clients. And she passed away how many years ago? Just a lovely, lovely lady.
2014.
2014.
She's been doing it.
And you started working with me about that time, or maybe a little?
No, I started in about 2004
Okay,
when I moved back down here.
okay, all right.
Mother
So let me tell
told me to
you,
do that.
I'm going to tell you what is frustrating in my world. So I'm going to take you behind the curtain. This is like watching a puppet show, and you're saying, "Oh, yeah, it's interesting," and you walk behind the curtain, you got all this going on. So I'm sitting talking with clients, and this last year, they're scared to death. Oh, my money, I'm going to go broke. I mean, this. And then 30 minutes later, I'm on a conference call with people with Fidelity or Vanguard or American Funds who manage your money, those of you that have money with me. And they're saying, yeah, we're backing away. We're backing away, and we want to come in at this point. And you know what they want? They want enough individual investors or enough small investors to get scared and bail out, and they step right back in. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So Amy, let's go to Yahoo Finance.
Okay. This
So what I try to say to people without telling too much, and what they're trying to do is scare people to death. So they can come in and buy things.
That doesn't want to work.
Let me just, real quick, give me just a second, let me zoom that out.
So let's go back to, just go back to 1 year.
Okay.
I want you to look at something for just a minute. This was the low right here.
Let me clear those lines and I can
Okay.
help you out.
Yeah, just right click on it and you clear them out of there.
Okay.
So here's a year. So the market sells off to right here, comes back up, it comes back and it sells off. You can't really see this because of the volume lines. Exactly the same place. Now I've been watching this for 45 years, and here's what's an amazing thing. Market sells off to not kind of the same place, exactly the same place. And it comes back up. And then it sells off again. And it stops at exactly the same place. And it goes up again. And it comes back and it hits the same place again. How do you think that happens? That the market drops, the drops are within a few dollars of exactly the same place when there's a sell-off. What do you think's causing that to happen?
The people behind the curtain.
That's right. This is
Shaking
what's
out the
happening
sissies.
behind the curtain. When they want to get large numbers of individual investors and small-time people out, they will flush them out by backing away from the table and letting the market drop. I get the privilege, and that's why I have a very different 45 years of watching this, but I also know what's happening behind the curtain. And this is what I try to teach people. If you were to look at that line, these are days. That line right there, that line, that line, that line, that line, I'm going to tell you these are within a couple of dollars of the same place. Now, here's what's amazing is in October, the market was down. Look at this. This is 15%. You see where it is today? This move, we have had a 13% move in 3 months. If you got scared right here and got out, you're going to say, that stock market, it's just like a gambling casino. You lose all your money and you never get it back. When they had just put their statement up, how you doing? They had just put their statements up and let it alone. This is where we are. I'm going to tell you something else. I'm not a prophet, but 12 months from now, we will be a lot higher than we are now. Because it's flushed out a lot of things. The market is always forward looking, not backwards. Oh, this happened, this happened. It's not moving on things today. It's moving on what's going to happen in 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. The price of a stock is how consistently do they get their earnings right, and how good are they at predicting what they're going to make in 3 months and 6 months and 9 months. The market is always forward looking, not backward. So what I can tell you is right in here, we were sitting on 20% cash. Now, that number is about $60 million in cash. We put about 60% of that work, so around $40 million to work right in here. Now, the gentleman that you talked to, how did he make that kind of money? Because his account's sizable, but not massive. How did he make that kind of money in a few months?
Bought low.
We were in right here. And this is where we are 3 months later. So let's go to the 5-year number.
You write it up out of a hole, right? I mean, that's.
Do you want me to make that bigger or
No,
less?
you're good.
Okay.
So I want you to click right here. Let me show you something.
Right here?
Yeah, click there. Now all the way over here. This is 5 years ago to the day.
Okay, hold on, I'm sorry guys,
Okay.
I'm not as good as Rick with mine, but I got it, okay.
All right. Now come up here. I want you to look at something right in here. Let's go a little higher. All right. It's not following. That's okay. You know what this line is? This is the 10% annual return line for the last 5 years. If you go back 5 years ago and you click on that, and then you come up here and you take a look at where we're at right here, that's right at 50%. That's the 10% annual return. Look right here. You see how this dropped? Well, where does it come back to?
Do you want me to click there?
No, you're
Okay.
You're fine. This was COVID. So COVID, 35% drop. It took about 6 months to come right back to our 10% line. Let me tell you what happened right in here. This is what I'm going to close with. Right in here, the government began printing money. Printing money, massive quantity, 7 billion, trillion, I meant to say, $7 trillion. And they were just spreading it out all over the world. And there was nothing to buy. Couldn't buy plywood because they hadn't cut any trees down in a year's time. You couldn't get things from China or Japan. The ships were not working, trucks were not working. And so, in 2020, I'm going to tell you the 2 best performing stocks in the year 2020. Zoom. Anybody know what Zoom is?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, because that's how you met me. Office
And
was
here's,
meeting.
the second best performing stock in 2020. Peloton.
I was gonna say mass painters.
Exercise.
Protective gear.
So what do Zoom and Peloton have in common? One of them is so now they sold around a little over 6 million bikes, and nobody wants another bike. So the stock's down about 90%. But the interesting
What's
thing,
Peloton?
It's that
Peloton's
stationary, right?
exercise
They-
equipment.
Oh.
You know, where you can do the different hills.
sorry.
and
It's your
valleys.
rap wheel at home.
No, I don't.
so now Peloton is down 90% because everybody already bought a bike.
Yeah.
Here's what they're doing. Trying to sell you monthly prescriptions
Yes, that's it.
because they're about to go out of business. So we have this tremendous run up because of $7 trillion was spent. And we are way, way above our 10% line. And what do you think is going to happen eventually?
Bring it all out.
This is the regression to the mean. And where did all of this that you see, we're talking about, this is October, November, December, January, right here. Where did that come back to? Our 10% line. When we start seeing this, we start peeling out. The problem we ran into this year was bonds were down as much as stock. They were down 15 to 18%. That's only happened one other time in the history of America, and that's rectifying itself, but it's because the Federal Reserve has cranked up rates unbelievably. 75 basis points, 0.75% per month, 4 times. So we're at almost 5% 6 months, and the bond market can't keep up.
When was it before that happened?
2008 housing crisis. So the Federal Reserve has one bullet in the gun. They raise interest rates to slow the economy down, and that's what they're doing now. Now, here's always the concern. You see, there's always a lag. When they raise rates, they don't know exactly when the lag hits. That's why you keep hearing about recessions. Next time, I want to talk about, you may think, oh, the recession, the stock market's going to do terrible. It'll blow you away. What happens to stocks during recessions? Here's just the thing I'll leave with. So there's a bunch of companies in the last 2 weeks' time have laid off 10 to 30,000 people. Anybody know how many people work for Amazon? Used to. 600,000 people work for Amazon. 600,000 people. They just laid off 30,000. It's only 5% of the workforce. And Amazon stock gone up. Why would that be? Future earnings. Future earnings. So there's a lot of things that you look at, oh, that's bad. No, that's good. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. That's kind of how this works. I'm done. Any questions?
Like initially, I thought intuitively when the administration changed from Trump to Biden that everybody hold on to their pocketbook because we're about to go. But as you said, or maybe I'll paraphrase what you said right away, there was so much money missing skids just flying out there that it wound up back in play.
Well, and it's being spent away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going away and lining out, and there's no fast way to do that. When you just start printing money and flying over the country in airplanes and just dropping it out, the trillions of dollars, and there's nowhere to spend it. So here's inflation. Too many dollars chasing too few goods. So you can't get ships in from China. You have all. I was in Newport Beach back in April, 9 months ago, and flying into Newport Beach, John Wayne Airport, you could see almost 100 ships parked. Now they don't park them where they used to. You've got to be at least 12 miles off in international water. And you know why? They do not want people coming down Interstate 101 and seeing 50 ships sitting out there. And you can't get baby formula, and you can't get diapers, and you can't get, here a while back, baby aspirins, things that we've never heard of before. Children's cough syrup. Couldn't find it. Well, it's sitting out there on ships. And they didn't have enough longshoremen, and if your truck was more than 3 years old, you can't drive it into California. And,
Oh, wow.
but at any rate, this is what I would like for you to take away. Every human being, the stock market performance is not in question. The only thing that's in question is the individual's performance. Can we keep people, get them to realize this concept? This was something Albert Einstein came up with. He called it at the time the eighth wonder of the world. That was before they built the Astrodome, which became the other eighth wonder of the world. He said the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Just even somebody that's 50 years old, if you're doubling your money every 7 years, and you live another 40 years, 35 to 40 years, that's pretty sizable, isn't it?
What was
All right.
the W stand for? FAA. It was Facebook, Apple, Amazon.
That's Netflix,
Oh,
Netflix
that's
and Google.
N?
So Facebook is now Meta. Amazon is now what? Forget the name. They changed the name. Anyway, Google. I'm talking about. Google is
Google's
now
Alphabet.
Alphabet. But 2 years ago, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google was 25% of the return of the S&P 500. Out of 500 stocks, only 6 of them, 5, and there was one other that they added later, which was Apple.
Your acronym NINJA, what was it, no income,
No job.
no job. Now we have DINKS, double income, no kids,
Yeah.
no earners, and they can't keep up with inflation, or, that seems to be an issue, so. The DINKS and the ninjas.
So, I'm not a prophet, but I'm going to tell you the next 2 years in the United States, nationwide housing starting new houses are down 40%. Closings on new houses are down around 40 to 45%. That number is more like 20% here in Brazoria County because we've got so many new jobs, and now the port is about to bring more people in. But I will tell you one thing that is exploding: apartments. So now, after this debacle in 2008 and 9, a young person, first-time home buyer, has to have 20% down, which most of us, you did some years ago, 20% down. And the average house price in Brazoria County is $380,000. Let's say it's $400,000. Somebody's got to have $80,000, and they're going to pay 7% interest. And I'm just going to tell you, there's only one thing that determines how many houses get sold. What is my monthly payment? This is what I'm paying for an apartment. This is what I can afford. What is my monthly payment? So you're going to see a slowdown. You're going to see home builders going under. You're going to see real estate agents who bought a bunch of property going under unless they can rent it. And rents will start dropping. This is a natural cycle. If you were to take a look at the price of land and the price of houses in Brazoria County, what do you think it's gone up in the last 5 years?
40%? Oh,
I bet you it's gone up 20 to 30% a year. Well, there's always a regression to the mean, and people say, oh no, the world is coming to an end. No,
It's a cycle, it always
it's
is.
this man. All right, thank you guys for coming,
Thank you.
and please take some food with you.